Her withdrawal from the spotlight wasn't a calculated PR maneuver. It was an act of self-preservation. Amber Heard, after being dissected and debated across every media platform imaginable, recognized that the version of herself shaped by public scrutiny was no longer sustainable. The trial had transformed her into a symbol, either of deceit or of strength, depending on whom you asked, but not a person. In Palma de Mallorca, she began to strip away those layers imposed by fame and controversy, allowing herself to exist without the relentless judgment that had followed her every step. Friends noted that she finally had time to breathe, to reflect, and most importantly, to raise her daughter without interference. The decision to step back from Hollywood was rooted not in defeat, but in defiance, a quiet rebellion against the toxic cycle of celebrity scandal and redemption. During her time in Spain, Heard focused on rebuilding her identity from the inside out. She reportedly enrolled in Spanish-language courses, took up painting, and joined a local women's hiking group. These weren't the activities of someone plotting a dramatic return. They were the actions of someone relearning how to live outside. The Hollywood machine. She became a fixture in the local community, known more for her kindness at the local bakery than for her past headlines. Her daughter, Oonagh Page, became her entire world, and motherhood grounded her in a way that few other experiences could. The bond between them became a source of strength that fortified her through the lingering fallout from the trial. Meanwhile, in Hollywood, a subtle but noticeable shift was occurring. Conversations about Heard started to change. Former critics began to soften their tone, noting her absence and restraint as signs of growth. The industry, always hungry for a redemption arc, started to reconsider the narrative. Casting directors who once hesitated to even mention her name began to quietly include her in discussions again, not for blockbuster tentpoles but for nuanced, indie-driven roles that aligned more closely with her current public image. It wasn't just about giving her another chance. It was about recognizing that people evolve and that perhaps the Amber Heard of 2025 was not the same woman the world watched on trial in 2022. All the while, Heard kept her distance from the media frenzy. She didn't grant tell-all interviews. She didn't issue grand declarations of her innocence or guilt. She let the silence speak for her, and in that silence, people began to wonder, had they misunderstood her? Was she truly the villain in someone else's narrative or a deeply flawed human being navigating impossible circumstances? The complexity of her story started to resonate more deeply in a culture that was slowly beginning to question the binary nature of public judgment. In many ways, the very thing that had once made her a pariah, her vulnerability, was now becoming a quiet asset. And in that newfound grace, Amber Heard seemed poised not just to return, but to redefine herself entirely. Insiders began to take note of the profound changes in Amber Heard, not just in her public demeanor, but in the aura she carried with her. It was more than a rebranding. It was a recalibration of her identity. Friends who visited her in Spain described her as more grounded, more centered than they had ever seen her during her years in Hollywood. Therapy had become a consistent part of her healing process, not for image management, but for genuine introspection. Journaling gave her a private outlet for the thoughts and feelings she had long kept buried under layers of celebrity armor. In those pages, she reportedly explored themes of self-forgiveness, trauma, and accountability. She was not trying to erase the past, but to understand it and learn from it. Her rejection of high-paying interview offers further signaled that she was no longer interested in winning a war of public opinion. Instead, she was intent on regaining her sense of self away from the noise. The first sign of Amber's readiness to re-engage with the industry came not in the form of a grand announcement, but through her quiet agreement to star in the Fire. The project, a period psychological thriller set in a remote Colombian village, was as far removed from her previous high-profile roles as it could get. It was a gamble. There was no guaranteed box office draw, no superhero franchise backing. Her return. But for Heard, that was exactly the point. She wanted a project that would challenge her and strip away the distractions. Working with director Connor Allen, she immersed herself in the role, reportedly spending weeks studying the historical and cultural backdrop of the script, and working closely with dialect coaches and psychological consultants to portray her character with authenticity. Crew members described her as focused, generous on set, and completely devoid of the diva behavior some might have expected from a former tabloid fixture. When the film premiered at a lesser-known European festival in late 2024, few predicted the ripple effect it would have. Though modest in scale, In the Fire was met with enthusiastic applause from those in attendance. Reviewers noted that Heard brought an unexpected emotional depth to the film, portraying a woman grappling with madness and morality in an unforgiving world. Her performance didn't scream for attention. It lingered, drawing viewers into a slow-burning intensity that was far removed from the performative roles of her past. For the first time in years, people were discussing Amber Heard not in terms of scandal, but in terms of craft. Still, the response from the public was divided. The internet, ever polarized, continued to dredge up headlines from years past. Clips from the courtroom resurfaced, and hashtags both condemning and defending her trended in tandem. But something was different this time. The outrage was less fervent, the defenses more articulate. A growing number of voices emerged calling for compassion, for a recognition that people evolve and change, and that perhaps the industry and the public needed to rethink how it handles women caught in the crossfire of scandal. Amber's refusal to engage with either camp only strengthened her position. She wasn't playing to win over anyone. She was simply doing the work. At the premiere, she walked the red carpet alone, dressed in a sleek, minimalist gown that mirrored the quieter tone of her comeback. Her interactions with the press were brief but gracious. There were no sound bites. Crafted to go viral, no controversy-stirring remarks. Just a woman who had, against many odds, found her footing again. The whispers of a comeback were no longer just whispers. They were the early hum of something real, something earned. As this quiet reawakening unfolded, the online ecosystem began to reflect the change. Influencers, entertainment bloggers, and even some mainstream media outlets started shifting the narrative around Amber Heard. Instead of recycled footage from the courtroom or sensationalized gossip columns, there was a growing focus on her earlier work, reminding audiences of the talent that once captured attention before the drama took center stage. Clips from her role in All the Boys Love Mandy Lane circulated on TikTok and Instagram, with users admiring her nuanced performance in the indie horror cult favorite. Scenes from The Rum Diary, where she shared the screen with Johnny Depp, were reevaluated not for their romantic overtones, but for the charisma and magnetism she brought to the screen. These moments became digital artifacts in a broader movement to view her with new eyes, not as a symbol of scandal, but as an artist whose career had been overshadowed by chaos. Simultaneously, her visual transformation became a topic of fascination. This wasn't the type of makeover fed to the public by stylists and brand endorsements. It was organic, almost anti-Hollywood in its subtlety. The polished, red carpet-ready Amber was replaced by someone who looked like she belonged in a European art house film. Her wardrobe was filled with flowing fabrics, earthy tones, and understated silhouettes. She walked the streets of Madrid and Palma de Mallorca with the confidence of someone no longer performing for the cameras. Photos of her out and about revealed a softer, more serene version of herself, often accompanied by her daughter or lost in thought at an outdoor cafe. This visual rebranding was powerful, not because it aimed to win over skeptics, but because it radiated a kind of hard-won peace that couldn't be manufactured. The shift didn't go unnoticed by the entertainment world. The buzz that started as a whisper among fans and independent critics slowly made its way to the upper tiers of the industry. Executives and producers, once wary of her association with controversy, began making discreet inquiries. While nothing was confirmed, the speculation itself carried weight. One insider leaked that a streaming giant was exploring a prestige limited series in which Heard might play a complex, morally ambiguous lead, roles often reserved for actresses seeking critical reappraisal. International filmmakers, particularly those in Europe and Latin America, were reportedly more enthusiastic, viewing Heard through a different cultural lens, as an actress with real-life gravitas and a willingness to reinvent. The momentum continued to build with a carefully chosen interview she granted to a respected European arts magazine. Eschewing the glossy spreads and sensationalized confessions often associated with celebrity comebacks, Heard opted for something quieter, more reflective. In the interview, she didn't rehash courtroom drama or launch into image rehabilitation. Talking points. Instead, she spoke about the transformative journey of motherhood, the solitude of artistic pursuit, and the value of stepping away from public validation. "I've lived many lives in a short time," she said, her voice reportedly calm but firm. "And I'm finally in a place where I don't feel the need to defend every part of who I am." That single line resonated across social media, reposted with admiration, curiosity, and even grudging respect. It was neither a plea for sympathy nor a bold reassertion of fame. It was, above all, human. That humanity, once buried beneath tabloid drama and viral courtroom clips, was now at the forefront. Amber Heard wasn't demanding a comeback. She was creating space for one to happen on its own terms. And in a culture slowly learning the value of grace, growth, and second chances, that quiet resilience might be the most compelling performance of all. Still, despite the stirrings of renewed interest and cautious optimism, significant questions linger about the viability of Amber Heard's potential comeback. The entertainment industry is a realm that rarely forgets and even more rarely forgives, particularly when the figure in question is a woman who has been vilified in the court of public opinion. While the backlash against Heard was complex, driven by a mix of media sensationalism, deeply polarized fan bases, and the spectacle of a highly publicized trial, it left a deep imprint on her public image. For many, she remains a controversial figure, one whose every move is still dissected and debated online. This reality poses a genuine challenge. Can audiences emotionally and mentally compartmentalize her personal history in order to appreciate her future artistic endeavors? And perhaps even more critically, is Amber Heard herself ready to navigate the treacherous waters of fame once again? Observers familiar with the evolving nature of entertainment point out that the paradigm has shifted. The traditional Hollywood model, wherein major studios acted as gatekeepers of fame and fortune, has fractured in the age of digital content and global storytelling. Streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Apple TV have become influential arbiters of what stories get told and which actors get rediscovered. Likewise, the prestige of international film circuits and the rise of art house projects from regions like Europe, Asia, and Latin America offer fresh territory for actors seeking to escape the long shadow of scandal. If Amber Heard leverages these opportunities wisely, she could steer her career into a quieter, more artistically fulfilling direction. This wouldn't require the noisy bombast of a blockbuster premiere or a press tour filled with defensive interviews. It would demand something subtler, a slow build anchored in credibility and artistic commitment. Moreover, the general public's capacity for narrative shifts cannot be underestimated. In a media environment that moves at lightning speed, today's scandal can easily become tomorrow's footnote. Audiences are often willing to forgive or at least reconsider when celebrities demonstrate a sustained period of humility, introspection, and personal evolution. Heard's retreat to Spain might not have simply been a coping mechanism. It may have been an act of strategic self-preservation. Her avoidance of the limelight, refusal to stoke controversy, and decision to focus on parenting and personal healing have contributed to a quieter, more grounded public image. Even those who were once vehemently critical of her have begun to acknowledge that she is no longer the same woman who stood on that courtroom floor. Her new demeanor, marked by a noticeable serenity and understated elegance, suggests a profound internal shift. She's no longer pushing to be seen as a leading lady on studio posters or clamoring for media attention. Instead, she exudes the calm confidence of someone who knows what she wants, and more importantly, what she no longer needs. The fame that once defined her now seems secondary to the fulfillment of authentic creative expression. This redefinition could prove to be her greatest asset. Whether or not the mainstream embraces her again, Amber Heard appears poised to build something more sustainable and meaningful, a career that isn't dependent on spectacle but one that quietly demands respect. And in an age where authenticity resonates louder than spin, that may be her most powerful transformation yet. And now, as 2025 quietly unfolds, a new chapter seems to be taking shape for Amber Heard, one that is less about spectacle and more about intention. The world's gaze, once filled with vitriol and polarized judgment during the turbulent days of the trial, has softened into something more nuanced: curiosity. It's not that the controversy has disappeared or that the collective memory of the past has faded completely, far from it, but there's a perceptible shift. People aren't shouting as loudly as they once did. Instead, they're watching, waiting, wondering. And in this new climate, Heard appears to be doing something many didn't expect, rebuilding not by fighting for redemption, but by embodying it in quiet, deliberate steps. She has become, almost paradoxically, both an enduring symbol of public controversy and a figure some quietly admire for her resilience in the face of relentless global scrutiny. It's not easy to be judged not only by the media but by millions of strangers on social platforms, each convinced of their version of your truth. The relentless nature of the court of public opinion is rarely kind, and yet Heard has endured it in a way that feels increasingly rare in the age of viral outrage and digital cancellation. Her decision not to loudly contest every insult, accusation, or meme may have in time become her greatest statement. Life in Europe, far from the ever-churning machinery of Hollywood, has given her the space to redefine her identity. She walks her daughter through quiet streets without being mobbed by paparazzi. She reads scripts, reportedly, with a newfound selectiveness, engaging only in projects that align with her values and artistic curiosity. This isn't the frenzied hustle of an actress desperate to stay relevant. It's something slower, steadier, more self-possessed. And in an industry where reinvention is often a manufactured stunt, hers feels unusually organic. Her consideration of future roles has become emblematic of this new philosophy. She's not seeking blockbuster roles that will thrust her back into the blinding spotlight. Instead, she appears interested in layered, intimate stories that allow her to communicate depth without spectacle. Conversations with independent filmmakers and European directors hint at a quieter resurgence, one grounded in artistry rather than image management. Heard isn't begging for public approval. She's simply showing what she can do when the noise is stripped away, and that, ironically, may be what earns her a second chance. Of course, uncertainty remains. There will always be those unwilling to move past the courtroom drama, who see her through the narrow lens of past headlines. But Heard doesn't seem focused on changing their minds. If anything, she seems to be at peace with the idea that she can't. What she can control is her own evolution, how she chooses to live, to work, to mother, to be. And this acceptance, this refusal to beg for redemption or explain herself into exhaustion, might be the most revolutionary act of all. In a culture addicted to the rise and fall narrative, Amber Heard is writing something far more rare: a slow, conscious, unapologetic reinvention. One step at a time, one choice at a time. And that perhaps is the truest form of power.